Welcome back to our podcast. Today we're going to be discussing a bunch of different topics regarding the sports world. We're going to be diving into topics, especially about the salaries involved. So I'm going to start us off by saying I believe that athletes are a bit overpaid.
Okay.
I think certain athletes they get paid too much of what they're worth. I think they have one or two good seasons and they're getting thrown hundreds of millions of dollars for things that are obviously incredible and they work very hard to do, but I think that there are people that should be getting paid similar amounts. If not, they should be getting less, because people like doctors or surgeons or lawyers who go and work and go to school for 8+, 12+ years to do these things are getting paid pennies of what some of these athletes are getting paid, and I frankly don't think it's right.
I mean, I can agree to that, but another portion of why they get paid so much is off of what they get sponsored for, too. So a lot of their sponsorships are so much money that that's what makes up most of their pay, regardless of what they're making within the league. So why are they still making it within the sponsors?
I think it's very interesting, especially the whole debate with sponsors and Nike and Adidas and all those things, and it brings you to wonder what can you kind of do to make it more deserving for. So it's not just like people, like the athletes that deserve real sponsorships, rather than the people that have a couple good games and then they get $10 million thrown at them or stuff like that. Do you think there's a way we can make it so it's more like even and fairly?
I think one thing is also is you gotta look at what players have to necessarily go through. If you look at players in the NHL, their bodies go through a lot more aggression, contact and whatnot, compared to a basketball or golf player that's making probably double what they're making.
Mm-hmm.
They're swinging a golf club. The worst thing that they could probably do, roll their back or maybe throw their back out. They're out for a couple weeks. Hockey players, they're going out there. They're taking hard hits. They're risking a lot, and honestly, their pay doesn't show. I mean, the highest one even doesn't cross the line of what a normal basketball player even makes half the time.
I think a big part of it too is that all these professional athletes see the college athletes getting paid millions of dollars in endorsements through NIL deals, so they want that money in the professional leagues, especially too because a lot of those college athletes bring their endorsements to the professional level.
I don't agree with NIL, because I understand you want to make money off your name, but you should not be making the amount of money that's in the millions just because you're in college, playing a college sport like that. I can understand $10,000, a couple $1,000, but not over the $1 million stuff like that.
I agree and I disagree, solely because it's not every athlete should be getting NIL constantly the way that they do. It should be, again, there are players that are basically sold by their colleges. They push them to do all these sponsorships.
Like Debo Samuel and all those other Colorado kids that you have being shown, the big Top Gun. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. That's the big names that come to mind when you think of that.
And when you look at them, and they're the best players in their sports that have trained and trained and trained and trained and trained, that maybe not being thrown tens of millions of dollars is the best idea, but they should be compensated in a fair way. But it's also, you have to think that they're also already getting special treatment from the universities.
Exactly.
They're getting special treatment from people that is throwing these 18, 19, 20-year-old kids millions of dollars. Really, all of that good of an idea.
Well, I think it depends what they do with the money too. You see a lot of them put on camps and stuff to help support their areas around where they were from, or just the kids around to help inspire them.
I mean, I think that's still great, but at the same time, you got to look at the fact of they're making this money. They're also getting their scholarships. They're also getting these sponsors. How much do you actually have to pay them before it's actually enough?
Do you think
before they reach that pro level where they're going to be making that money plus whatever sponsors are paying them?
Do you think if they're getting NIL that they should be like their scholarship should be kind of either lowered or taken away to give to other kids that also deserve scholarships if they're getting that much money?
If that's the case, I think there's a difference between getting scholarship money to go to college there and be a student athlete compared to going to school with a scholarship to just be an athlete.
Mm-hmm.
If you are going to school there to be a student athlete, you shouldn't be getting all this money because that takes away from your ability as them recognizing you as a student athlete.
Mm-hmm.
You should still be making that like a money within that's a fair amount, but it's not going to be this millions of dollars because that takes away the responsibility of them seeing you as what you are. Versus if you're an athlete that they're just investing in as an athlete, that's a little bit different to me. They can make probably a little bit more.
I agree. I feel like giving these athletes both, it takes away from the walk-ons that work for it. It takes away from the students that go to school to do it, that can't always afford everything.
I feel like that takes away from some of the other things that they could be doing with that money. They could be necessarily using that money to help fund, again, like you said, their camps. How much money do they actually put into these camps? They probably put a couple hundred, couple thousand into it. But what do they do with that other thousands and millions of dollars? And besides, when you look at it, athletes, yeah, they give you like a role modelship, but what's more important at the end of the day, your athletes or your doctors that's going to help save your life necessarily?
I agree.
Do you think, like, between sports, like, every sport, again, like I said, has different ranges of contacts, different names to them. Do you think that's also really important to, like, NIL or how they're sponsored?
Yeah, I feel like since NIL has been kind of introduced, the only sports that I've really seen kind of prosper from it have been football and basketball.
I was going to bring that up, too, because hockey, you have to go through so many levels just to get into the college level, and you don't even like get any kind of compensation for it.
I know
the
hockey
high players
too as freshmen in college that graduate at 26 just to go to the league for a couple years. Like, I haven't heard any big time college hockey player getting the NIL deals that some basketball players get or football players. Like we said, Colorado. Like, I never have seen any hockey players walking around with chains around their necks.
I mean, you gotta look at it too. Like, a lot of these college football players, college basketball players, they aren't necessarily also treating it like it's a profession. They're coming in, like you said, big chain necessarily. I get, yeah, you can dress up a little bit here and there, like have some fun with it. But at the end of the day, it's a profession. That's your job too. You gotta look professional.
I agree. I think even when we look at like some of the bigger sports, obviously football and basketball obviously make the most money for the NCAA, which obviously warrants the NIL and stuff like that. But it's like you said, where does contact and danger come involved? Because hockey is a very dangerous sport. We've seen it, we've heard about it. How do you think they can go about trying to find a more sustainable way for everyone, especially the people that, like you said, are going into college older, that have gone through the process of playing from juniors to like to high school, to having to go back, like not living with their parents for so long sometimes because they have to bounce all around for hockey. Like, what do you think we could do about that?
I feel like, especially with like the way hockey is, a lot of the gear, yeah, it's expensive. So a lot of their gear is sponsored and given to them. But at the same time, like, if you have someone that's able to have that ability to make it necessarily semi-pro or maybe even NHL level pro, they're going to need that little help. Maybe give them that extra 100,000, couple thousand, necessarily to help them maybe pay for a rent, maybe pay for their next meal. Something that will help them. I mean, I don't expect any meal to be $10,000, but give them that little bit of help to understand that their name is trying to be put out there. The college is trying to help put their name out there. Because I don't ever see people wearing a Connor Bedard shirt from when he was in college and whatnot, because he never went to college. Or you have guys that did go to college to play hockey, you never see any of their jerseys around.
I agree. I agree. I think it's a kind of rocky topic. It's it's difficult to kind of be like you don't deserve money to people that have worked hard for like the long periods.
So hold on, let's do a quick comparison. What is the highest paid NBA player real quick? Do you know what he makes?
Let's see.
Is it Tatum?
I don't know off the top.
Says
of my head.
Curry is set to earn just shy of 56 million.
56.
There's 5 players that will make more than 50 million, including Joel Embiid, Nikola Jokic, Durant, and Bradley Beal.
So over 50 players are supposed to make over 50 million.
Mm-hmm.
So for football, what's the highest there? And this will make all sense once we figure this out.
Dak Prescott was $60 million.
So the highest paid NHL player is 13.25 million, but he lives in Canada, so they have to compensate for Canadian tax. So if you bring it down, that's two point whatever million going to in taxes. So when you compare it to a American player, that the highest American player is 11.64 million.
If we want to talk about real quick, if we're talking about highest paid while we're talking about it, the highest paid soccer player in the world is estimated at $260 million in income.
Is that a year?
It's a year.
That's not.
It's actually Cristiano Ronaldo, who, give or take, is the best player in the world ever.
Again.
Yeah, but his 1 year is Dak Prescott got a 4-year contract for $240 million.
Well, then we have to talk about
And then Tatum got a 5-year deal for $315
But that's also the big thing too. Is again the
million.
names bring what brings the money, and that's understandable. And the league that they're in
When
brings
you
the
say-
money.
When you say Ronaldo or Messi or
Well, you also,
Tatum or Curry, like those names warrant the biggest, like the
'cause you also have
contract.
to think what they did for that like program and that organization too, and like if they helped put it back on the map or helped rebuild it, and they
Mhm.
bought into the whole rebuilding process. So it's like they weren't the best players originally, but they still
who
worked
make
their
money?
way up.
Tennis players. Tennis
Tennis
players make a
players make-
lot of. So do golf players.
Mhm.
Again, but
Shout
do
out
you think-
Professor, but
But do you think those players should be making that amount? Even let's say,
can't front,
regardless of their name, let's say their name doesn't matter in this case. Their name, they're a player that plays in that league. They're probably the best on their team, regardless. Do you think they deserve to be making that 13 million, that 100 million, or whatever amount they're making? Do you think they deserve that?
See, for me, 13 million for an athlete a year isn't a terrible amount of money. I think that's fair.
Yeah, that's fair.
I think if you're playing 10 or 15 seasons or even 7 or 8 seasons with 13 million, I think that's a reasonable amount of money. I think when it gets to the realms of 90, 100, 200,
Yeah.
when it gets to like those realms, it's
So
like we're just throwing money at people because they're what?
Because they have it.
Because they have a name to them. So
Yeah.
if you look at doctors and whatnot, you don't really hear of much doctors. I mean, you occasionally hear of a famous doctor, and they're probably just not making. Yeah, the face you just gave just explained it all. I can tell you who Cristiano Ronaldo is. His name comes right up. You could bring up a doctor that you know, and their name probably doesn't come up right away. Which would you still prefer in that situation to pay for? Because in a way, you are still paying for them. You pay for the stadium. Because a lot of stadiums are community-based.
When we're
Yeah.
talking about doctors real quick, the top 1% of doctors make about $4 million annually. The
See-
top one, that means the best of the best are bringing home a third of what the highest paid NHL players
See,
are
that's
bringing.
that's where I disagree with how much athletes are making. Is I would rather pay for a doctor than an athlete.
Neurosurgeons, their annual average salary is about $788,000.
That seems
Some
for
players make that in a week.
Yeah.
But
So-
then if you compare that to like the WNBA or that stuff, they only make, I think,
They only make minimum
they make
wage.
33,000 for a year. So they don't even make enough to
That's like a
survive.
part-time job.
Angel-
Like they
at
have
that
to
point.
go. I mean, yes, they have their endorsement deals, but that's where like
That's
that
like a
helps
part-time
them.
job, though.
Yeah,
It's
like if
some-
they don't have their endorsements,
to
they have
me-
to then go get another job.
I mean, Angel Reese said that the NBA wasn't even, or WNBA wasn't even paying her bills. Like, they weren't
Like,
paying for anything. She's paying for it herself. At that point, is it even worth going to the WNBA when you can
No,
stay in
that's
college
why
for
they all
another
go.
year?
Well, that's why they all go overseas to make the money.
Mm-hmm.
But that's where the issues come up of just player safety and being away from their families and everything.
I mean, I get like you're probably also paying for the health of the player. You're also paying for all the equipment and all that for the player, and they're getting the sponsorships. But do they, like, they're already making a lot of money there? Do they really need like an extra $200 million thrown at them?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think it's interesting too how it's like the NFL can make so much money, but they only play 12 games a season.
Hockey, they pay
Versus hockey, they make the most expensive contract is 13 million, but they have to play at least 82 games a year.
plus playoffs if you
Yeah, I was
make
gonna say
it.
that's without playoffs.
And playoff games are 6 games.
So you can
Or
end
7.
up playing more
6
than
or
100
7,
games
yeah.
in a year.
Yeah, you can play over 100 games. Same thing with soccer.
Yeah.
You said earlier
Yeah,
that
you
you
can
pay
play.
you play a lot of games, and half the time if you're injured, just with like a sprain or whatnot, you still have to play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the NFL is a complicated organization. I think it's always been we've seen it in shows and movies that we've watched, but it's and in real life, obviously we've seen it.
I think another big thing with the NFL is ever since DraftKings came in, I mean, players were still making a big amount of money, but until like all these like gambling stuff came in, that's where another bunch of money comes in for them, so they're able to throw even more money
Mm-hmm.
towards them. Be like, hey, we have all this extra cash, we don't know what to do with it. We can either invest it or put it towards our players, which they're good thing. That, like, it's good that they're putting it towards the players and all the safety and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, they don't necessarily need another $200 million on top of their other $200 million.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I just think the whole money construct. It's too late in the sports world to reshape it, which I think is the problem.
But you
Because in the next 5 years, 10 years, how much are the top players going to be making? 500, 600 million?
You also got to remember there was also a big, what is it called? Crap, I'm losing my train of thought here. But there was a big like thing where athletes were stopped playing because they weren't getting paid enough.
Mm-hmm.
There's a big, I forget what the word is, but they were just stopped playing altogether.
I know what you're talking about.
Well, in the NHL when they did the lockout season.
Yes, that's when they did the lockouts. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mhm. No, I think.
Well, that's the thing too. Is you have these athletes in certain sports that make these hundreds of millions of dollars. So then others like sports and athletes are like asking why they can't make the same amount of money. So then eventually it's all just gonna keep increasing.
I think it's even funnier when people throw hissy fits because they're like, "Oh, you didn't pay me that extra $50 million when I already make this $200 million or whatever." It's like, dude, you're already making that much money. How much
Mhm.
more do you want off what? You being an athlete. What else do you bring to the table
Yeah.
other than playing a sport?
Or it's crazy too. Their signing bonuses. Like
Mm.
Caleb Williams got a $25.5 million signing bonus.
Yeah, he's a rookie. He should, as a rookie quarterback, to me, you should not be making that. It is your first year. It's
He,
just
Yeah,
like a
it's proving
he didn't
yourself.
prove
Yeah.
anything. He just got that money right away.
You
It's
can-
like any other job. You have to prove yourself for it.
It's like you
You-
can do good in school, but like say you're a doctor, right? You're a nurse. Say you're a third-year nursing student, right? You're a junior. You're about to graduate, and then say you're a senior now. You're about to graduate. You're not experienced. You have to go intern. You have to learn
Yeah.
the organization. You have to learn
You
the
start at the
work.
bottom of the food chain and have
You
to
shouldn't
work
be
your way
getting-
up.
Getting
Rockford,
paid more than some regular, like some normal people get paid in their entire lifetime for getting drafted, picked first in a college world where you can just like be known and be good based on popularity. It doesn't show that you earned it in the big leagues where it's intense and where it's hard and where.
Well, yeah, look at Brady, who was he was the 199th overall pick,
Mm-hmm.
and is probably the best quarterback of all time, and he had to prove himself to like work his way up and earn the money he did, but he didn't get that automatic $25 million signing bonus.
Yeah.
Like he had to be under the he was a backup quarterback and had to prove himself and work his way up and prove to be the starting quarterback.
Did you know there are kids in high school right now getting NIL deals, making as much as it takes to pay our tuition?
Yeah.
Yeah, the
See, I'm
big
just-
sigh right there.
I just think
To
it's,
me, that seems messed up.
see,
It just
because when I was in high school, none of this existed.
yeah, exactly. This
And
is
it
all
was
new to all of
fun.
us.
Because you didn't do it for money. You did it because you loved your sport.
And that's the problem is people are losing that necessary
Mhm.
passion to play the sport. They just want the money now.
See, I played soccer in high school. I played my entire life. I love the sport, and obviously, but then when you put money gets involved, your love becomes different because you can't.
Becomes
You aren't
your
doing
job.
it
The money should
solely
just be a
because you want it.
bonus. The passion for the sport is just
Exactly.
that should be the main pay is you get to play the sport for so much longer. The pay should just be an extra kind of like, oh, we're paying you for your talents and, you know, being this character that we need you to be on and off the field.
And I think it's just it's complicating how people look at their sports because now you say you're a dual sport athlete and say you play let's say you do football and hockey, right? And obviously say you're better at hockey but football has more money. You're not going to do what you want to do. You're going to do what brings in the most money, which complicates how much you really want to do things.
There was a
Which
wide
one?
receiver for the New England Patriots. He played lacrosse. He left lacrosse to go play football
Mm-hmm.
to get more money. And lacrosse doesn't pay that much because not a lot of people watch it as much. It's growing now, but back then it was a sport that was kind of like, oh, it exists.
Mm-hmm.
And especially, I played both hockey and lacrosse. Those sports take a lot of mental and physical stuff to play. And it feels like football is just as physical sometimes, but it's not that 80 to 100 games that you could be playing.
Even when you look at football games, a lot of it isn't even really action. It's
You're
commercials.
standing around for like 2 minutes, and then you finally get the ball snapped to you.
And I can be corrected if I'm wrong, and someone fact check me on this. But I talked about in one of my sports management classes last year that there's about 15 to 20 minutes of action in every football game.
Yeah.
15 to 20 minutes. And say you play 12 games and you 15 to 20 minutes. That's not a lot of time to be making that much money.
Hockey is 25 minutes, pros, 25 minutes, and it's non-stop till you actually hear the whistle. So that's offsides, the puck goes out, the goalie freezes it. And if they call a timeout, that's normally like a minute.
Mm-hmm.
You barely have time for all that.
Mm-hmm. And even in soccer, it's 45 minutes, like you said. If you hear the whistle, you stop. But other than that, it's 45
It's
straight
continuous.
minutes.
It's always action.
It's continuous, and obviously that warrants them being paid a good amount of money. And with the popularity of the World Cup and the other leagues, the Champions League and stuff like that, obviously, it argues the fact that they're getting paid more than other like American sports, which again I disagree with. I don't think that the best players in soccer should be making $200+ million.
Yeah. So I want to actually bring up something else. So Super Bowl tickets, do you think they should be as expensive as they are? Because a regular season ticket is like what, $40?
It depends what team.
But it depends on a team.
Depends on the team in the arena.
But even still, like, should it be the expense, like that 150 to something just for a ticket to go watch a playoff game?
See, I mean the Super Bowl I feel like it's a little bit different because you're not just going to see the football.
Yeah, you get the whole.
You get the whole halftime
performance.
show, and I feel like depending on the artist, Like
But then
when it was Bruno Mars. Like I know my mom would have, if it was near us, my mom would have spent 17 to however much money she had to do to go see Bruno Mars. And I feel like a lot of people are like that
I mean,
when it
it
comes
is
to that.
ridiculously expensive for the Super Bowl, but it's an experience. Like,
Yeah.
but that also has nothing to do really with the athletes. That's
Yeah.
But
like,
people are also
arena and everything setting up the prices.
But also, if you look at it, they're also prices. They go like double almost. So people that go, you simply go get a thing of popcorn, a drink at a normal game. It normally costs you what, like $25? That now doubles.
Depends where you go.
Again, it depends on where you go.
Yeah, you can get
Now that like triples when it's the Super Bowl and you go and get the same thing.
it's like it's just marketing at the end of the day, kind of like.
But that just, to me, that doesn't seem right because it's maybe a little bit more of a special event.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, you're kind of robbing the fan of an extra little bit of money
Mm-hmm.
to maybe, I don't know, pay off that extra little bit of the contract that you didn't have that much money left for. So
I agree. I think it's yeah, I agree. I think that I just think the whole sports and money is a very
it's a
complicated
very
thing.
complicated thing because you're gonna have athletes push back when people are gonna say we don't want to pay you this anymore.
Well, I think you have to look at it too, and it's like with the Olympics being this summer, and a lot of the athletes came out at the time, depending on the sport they were playing, and like some of them got fired from their jobs because they had to take a month off to go represent their country, but their jobs wouldn't give them the time off.
Yeah.
But it's like they don't make enough, so they have to have another job, which is like, I don't think that should be okay.
But I mean, again, it's a debated topic. Like all of us have said, it's debated. There's always going to be some kind of pushback. It's regardless of how right it is or how wrong it is too.
Mhm.
So,
Well, I don't know, but yeah, I think it's like you said,
it's a matter of opinion too. So,
it's
And
just
there's like ups and downs too, like either way, like you can see it on both sides of they deserve it, but are they getting paid too much? Like,
and then you also have to look at like the people that own the teams,
yeah,
because there's a lot of owners that can't pay players that much. Like,
I mean, look at the Raiders, for instance. They're probably they're the lowest paying NFL team.
yeah,
and then
Brady just bought in ownership to
Yeah.
that team.
then you look at like other teams, especially when we look at in Europe and the like how teams are owned there. We have people like the Saudi Arabians who can throw billions of dollars at teams that they have or stuff
Yeah.
like that, and it's a complicated thing to be like you can't do that because
Yeah, it's like they
who's
can.
stopping them?
Even like the salary caps. Like, I mean, it makes sense that you have a cap, but at the same time, it's like that's still a cap of how much money. So, and how many teams actually will follow that cap?
Mm-hmm. Well, here's a recent roundup of sports news. In the NFL, we saw recent games with standout performances with teams like the Philadelphia Eagles and the Miami Dolphins continuing strong seasons. Injuries to key players have also made headlines as teams try to navigate through the midway point of the season. With the NBA, the preseason is rounding up. We heard that Bronny James will be going down to the G League to get some practice there, which is obviously much expected from him. In soccer news, the Champions League took place this week with top clubs, obviously Bayern Munich, Manchester City, and Barcelona securing important wins. Leagues are heating up with fierce competition in Premier League and La Liga, with Arsenal playing at Chelsea this week. With the MLB, the World Series matchup is set. Obviously, we're 2 games in. We saw the Dodgers
Play the Yankees.
We saw the Grand Slam.
Oh yeah.
We saw all that. We saw Shohei Ohtani doing obviously what he does best.
Over at the NHL, we have games tonight. We have the Blues at the Senators, the Wild at the Penguins, the Krakens at the Canadiens, and the Rangers at the Capitals.
And in tennis news, for anyone that wants to know, the ATP and the WTA tours are gearing up for the year-end championships. So, hope to see you all there. In Riv news, men's soccer plays tonight at 7. Women's soccer had a game at 4, and hockey started last weekend. So, go you guys. Thank you all so much for joining into our podcast.
We're going to take a break here real quick.
Yes, we are.